From a trend standpoint with ranching, I see that you're looking at savvy investors who are recognizing opportunities from an appreciation standpoint with better legacy opportunities, investment grade opportunities. To me, it's either one end of the spectrum or the other. In the southern portion of the country, in the Southwest, I see people buying very low cost per acre and running it on a shoestring budget and actually trying to catch a slow but steady appreciation. I think when you look at more of your legacy properties, I think you're looking at individuals who recognize that they are like artwork. I heard Joe Montana's broker talk about his piece of property, 500 acres in Sonoma County, as a Picasso. And I thought that was a really apt description because people are going to appreciate that Picasso. A certain select group who are qualified and interested in buying a piece of property like that are going to appreciate it, recognize it, and be willing to pay a premium. Conversely, at the other end of the spectrum, I think you're looking at people who are going to look at running an operation from a low-cost, bare-bones perspective, and that has always and will always have a place in ranch owning, and seeing appreciation there from strictly an economic standpoint. I think the element of game, especially big game, continues to be an enormous driver when it comes to ranch properties because it adds a valuable component, it adds a user-friendly component. You know, so many of the buyers of legacy properties are looking towards some place where they can bring family, business associates, try and put together deals, try to develop bonds. And for a lot of them, that might be done at Augusta. For some of them, it might be done out in a deer blind or on a fly fishing stream. And so I think the recreational component adds an immeasurable aspect to a great ranch. One of my favorite ranch owners in West Texas believes that the last fight between the last two people left on this planet is going to be over a water hole. It's not going to be over an American Express card or who's got the best beach access or something like that. It's going to be over a water hole. And as our population grows, we see this quite, Texas has a very strong growth in terms of population, and the water needs are rapidly accelerating. And taking that on a national level and looking at it, I think people do not realize the hidden assets associated with land. And I could just, name off wind rights that have been purchased that didn't exist or weren't even recognized 20, 25 years ago. These shale formations that cover tens of hundreds of millions of acres of the U.S. that our energy companies are tripping over each other to acquire these rights. And lastly, water itself is going to be a key component of the future development of our country from an economic standpoint, from a lifestyle standpoint. The value of water is only going to increase, and if my figures are correct, and I believe they are, the overwhelming majority of water in the United States is groundwater. It's below the surface. It's not Lake Superior. It's not the Yellowstone River. It's groundwater, and that holds an enormous potential for the potential landowner or existing landowners with their property. The land report is covering 2 billion acres of American land, our surface area. About 600 million of those acres are owned by the government, but even more acreage is owned by private individuals. And I think we have a legacy, an opportunity that people around the world recognize. And part of what the land report is to do is to help Americans recognize this legacy, because you don't realize how important it is from our country's security standpoint and our economic standpoint to be self-sustaining based on our land and its fruits. We've let that slip away when it comes to energy. We don't even recognize that we're completely, 3/4 of the oil, 2/3 of the oil that we consume on a daily basis comes from overseas, and how that jeopardizes our security and also disables our economy by shipping $1 billion a day overseas out of our economy. Land offers an investment, a lifestyle, and a cultural heritage that's unequaled from any other asset standpoint. I do believe that the more acreage that's in private hands, the better. It increases the tax base. It tends to lead to more employment. There's a greater vested interest in the land by having it in private hands. It's not to say, quite frankly, that there are people who don't treat the land right and denigrate it and use it and abuse it in ways that aren't keeping with the tenets of good stewardship. But I think, given the opportunity, the more land that's in private hands, the better. And I will immediately point out a great counterexample, which would be the Rockefellers' acquisition of much of the Teton Valley and preserving that for generations of future generations of Americans. That's an exception. There are other key exceptions out there, but I tend to believe that for the most part, unless it's to preserve a piece of property, perhaps to save it from development where the state or the federal government and its resources can make a difference, I tend to come down on the landowner side.